The valley had been silent for 11 minutes. Major David Cross stood in the command tent, one hand pressed against the tactical map, the other holding a headset he just removed. Outside, the fob hummed with the low diesel growl of generators and the distant clatter of mess trays. But the radio net, call sign Reaper Actual, had gone dead. 11 minutes of static where there should have been chatter. 11 minutes since the last transmission from the convoy pinned down in Sector 7. "Sir, we need to make a call." Captain Briggs leaned over the map table, his finger tracing the red circle where 2nd Platoon had stopped moving. 28 men, 4 vehicles, surrounded by terrain that swallowed radio signals and spit out body bags. Cross didn't answer immediately. He was doing math in his head: fuel time, altitude, angle of attack. The Apache gunships were grounded for rotor maintenance. The fast movers were 40 minutes out, maybe more. 40 minutes was a lifetime when you were taking fire from 3 sides. "Get me air support, anything." "Sir, there's only—" "I said anything." Briggs hesitated, then keyed the handset. "Scorpion 1-1, this is Firebase Anvil. Request immediate CAS, grid November Whiskey 7426, troops in contact, how copy?" The response crackled through with a voice that didn't match the call sign. Calm, almost bored, definitely female. "Anvil Scorpion 1-1, copy all. I'm 8 mics out with a full combat load. 30 Mike and Mavericks. What's the target?" Briggs glanced at Cross. The Major's jaw tightened. Everyone in theater knew the Scorpion call signs. A-10 Thunderbolts, Warthogs, slow, ugly, built around a gun that sounded like the sky tearing in half. Effective as hell, but this wasn't some practice run over empty desert. "Scorpion, be advised, friendlies are danger close. Enemy dismounts estimated 20 plus, technical vehicles, possible RPG teams in the ridgeline." "Copy, danger close, I'll make it work. What's your mark?" "Smoke is violet, north side of the convoy. Targets are everything south and east of that line." There was a pause, not long, just enough to feel the weight of what was about to happen. "Affirm, Anvil. Violet smoke cleared hot on the southern ridge. Keep your heads down. Scorpion 1-1 inbound." Cross put the headset back on. He didn't know the pilot, didn't know her name or her face or whether she'd done this before. He just knew that somewhere above the mountains, an A-10 was screaming toward his men at 300 knots, and whoever was flying it had just become the only thing standing between them and a nightmare. He looked at the map again. 11 minutes of silence. Now the sky was about to speak. The A-10 Thunderbolt II came in low, so low the dust on the ridgeline kicked up before the sound arrived. Lieutenant Colonel Iris Valen didn't believe in high-altitude heroics. She believed in seeing the battlefield with her own eyes, close enough to smell the burning oil and count the muzzle flashes. The Warthog was a beast, titanium bathtub around the cockpit, twin turbofans mounted high to avoid ground fire, and that gun, the GAU-8 Avenger, 30mm rotary cannon. 4,000 rounds per minute, it didn't just destroy targets, it erased them. She banked hard left, eyes scanning the valley floor through the HUD. The convoy was there, 4 Humvees in a loose defensive square, violet smoke curling up from the lead vehicle. Beyond them, the ridgeline crawled with movement. Technicals, pickup trucks with machine guns bolted to the beds. Dismounts scrambling between rocks. She could see the muzzle flashes now, tiny bursts of light stitching toward the Americans below. Anvil Scorpion 1-1. Visual on friendlies and hostiles, commencing gun run. She didn't wait for confirmation. The Warthog's nose dipped and the world tilted. The HUD pipper tracked across the ridgeline as she adjusted trim, throttle, angle. Everything had to be perfect. Danger close meant inches, not feet. One wrong burst and she'd be the one who killed them. Her thumb hovered over the trigger. The gun fired. The sound was apocalyptic, a deep guttural roar that didn't belong to any machine made by humans. It vibrated through the airframe, through her chest, through her teeth. 30mm shells tore into the ridgeline at 70 rounds per second, each one the size of a beer bottle, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to shred an engine block. The earth erupted in fountains of dust and stone. A technical disintegrated mid-frame, pieces of metal spinning into the air like confetti. She pulled up hard, G-forces slamming her into the seat. The Warthog climbed, slow and stubborn, engine screaming. Anvil 1 pass complete, assessing. Scorpion Anvil, good hits, good hits. Enemy fire has decreased. We need another run on the eastern slope. Iris didn't hesitate. She rolled inverted, pulled the stick back, and dove again. This time she saw faces. Men running, men dying. She didn't think about that. Couldn't. The job was simple, keep her people alive. Everything else was noise. The Mavericks came next. AGM-65s, laser-guided, fire and forget. She pickled off 2 in quick succession, watching the missiles arc downward like falcon strikes. The explosions blossomed orange and black against the mountainside. Secondary detonations followed, ammo cooking off, fuel tanks rupturing. Anvil Scorpion, eastern slope is clear, say status. There was a long pause. Then a different voice came through, rougher, out of breath. Scorpion, this is Reaper 26. You just saved our asses. We're moving now, thank you. Iris didn't reply. She pulled the Warthog into a lazy orbit above the valley, eyes sweeping for threats. The convoy was moving again, dust trails marking their escape route. She stayed overhead until they cleared the kill zone, until the ridgeline was just another scar on the landscape. Only then did she turn north, back toward base. Only then did she let herself breathe. The debrief room smelled like bad coffee and old sweat. Iris sat in the back corner, flight suit still damp with perspiration, helmet bag at her feet. She'd already filed her report, already walked through the engagement with the intelligence officer. Now it was just waiting. Waiting for the major to finish his speech, waiting for the handshakes and the thank yous, waiting to get back to her hooch and sleep for 10 hours. Major Cross stood at the front of the room, hands clasped behind his back. He looked tired. They all looked tired. Second platoon made it back, he said. 28 men, no casualties because of 1 pilot and 1 aircraft. There was a smattering of applause. Iris didn't react. She'd heard this before. The ground guys loved the A-10, loved the pilots who flew them until they didn't. Until someone higher up decided the Warthog was obsolete, too slow, too vulnerable. Then the love evaporated, replaced by budget cuts and early retirements. I want to recognize Lieutenant Colonel Valen, Cross continued. Scorpion 11. Call sign earned in Afghanistan, 3 tour, 200 combat missions. She's the reason those men are alive. The applause was louder this time. Iris nodded once, a small dip of her chin. She didn't do this for applause. Colonel, anything you want to add? She stood slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Just doing my job, sir. That's what the jet's built for. Cross smiled, thin and tired. Well, you do it better than most. She sat back down. The briefing continued. Logistics, resupply schedules, enemy movements. Iris stopped listening. Her mind was still in the valley, still watching the violet smoke curl into the sky, still hearing that voice on the radio, desperate and distant. After the briefing, Captain Briggs caught her in the hallway. Colonel, got a minute. She stopped, turned. Briggs was young, maybe 28, with the kind of clean-shaven face that made him look even younger. What do you need, Captain? I just wanted to say that was incredible. I've never seen flying like that. Iris studied him for a moment. He meant it. She could see it in his eyes. You ever been shot at, Briggs? No, ma'am. Then you don't know what incredible looks like. That was just training, repetition, muscle memory. Still, those guys, they won't forget it. She nodded. Good. Tell them to stay alive long enough to remember. She walked away before he could respond. The hooch was dark and quiet, exactly how she liked it. Iris peeled off her flight suit and stood under the shower for 20 minutes, letting the cold water wash away the sweat and the dust and the adrenaline. Her hands didn't shake anymore. They used to after missions like that, but that was a long time ago. She toweled off, pulled on a t-shirt and shorts and lay down on the narrow cot. The ceiling was corrugated metal, patched in 3 places with duct tape. She stared at it, counting the rivets, trying to quiet her mind. But the valley wouldn't leave her alone. She kept seeing the convoy, the violet smoke, the faces on the ridgeline, kept hearing the gun, that terrible roar, kept wondering if any of them had families, wives, kids. She didn't usually think like that, couldn't afford to. Her phone buzzed, a text from Major Cross. Debrief went well. Command wants to recommend you for a medal. Thoughts? She typed back quickly. Pass, save it for someone who needs it. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then. Understood. She set the phone down and closed her eyes. Sleep came slowly, dragged down by the weight of the day. When it finally arrived, it brought dreams of the valley, of the smoke, of the men she'd never meet but would carry with her anyway. Because that's what pilots did. They carried the weight. 2 days later, the story started spreading. Iris heard it in pieces, fragments of conversation in the chow hall, whispers in the ready room, second-hand accounts from crew chiefs and loadmasters. The details got bigger with each retelling. The ridgeline became a mountain. The enemy count doubled. The gun runs multiplied. But the core remained the same. Scorpion 1-1 saved 2nd Platoon. She ignored it, let them talk. Stories like that had a half-life in places like this. Another week, another mission, and someone else would be the hero. But this one didn't fade. On the 3rd day, a sergeant from 2nd Platoon found her near the flight line. He was older, maybe 40, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. Colonel Valen. She turned, wrench in hand. She'd been helping the crew chief torque down a panel on the Warthog's engine cowling. That's me. The sergeant extended his hand. She shook it. Sergeant First Class Mike Torrens. I was in that convoy, Reaper 26. Iris nodded. Glad you made it out. Yeah, because of you. He paused like he was choosing his words carefully. I got 3 kids back home. Wife's pregnant with number 4. I wasn't supposed to be on that convoy, swapped shifts with a buddy. You don't need to. I do, ma'am. I need you to know. What you did, it wasn't just a mission. It was my life, my family's life. I won't forget that. Iris looked at him for a long moment. His eyes were steady, sincere. She didn't know what to say, didn't have words for moments like this. Just stay alive, Sergeant. That's all I need. He nodded, stepped back, saluted. She returned it. He walked away, back toward the barracks, and Iris turned back to the jet. Her hands were shaking again. The Warthog sat on the tarmac like a monument to function over form. Iris ran her hand along the fuselage, feeling the rivets and the patches, the scars from 100 missions. This particular jet, tail number 956, was older than she was. Flew in Desert Storm, Kosovo, Iraq, Afghanistan. It had been shot, patched, rebuilt, and sent back into the fight more times than anyone could count. She loved it. Not the way people loved cars or houses. She loved it the way soldiers loved rifles. It was a tool, a partner, an extension of her will. The crew chief, Staff Sergeant Amya Rojas, appeared from under the wing, grease smeared across her forearm. She's ready to go, ma'am. Loaded 8 Mavericks, full drum on the gun. Fuel's topped off. Any issues? Port engine's running a little hot. Nothing critical, but I'm watching it. Iris nodded. Good, I'll keep it under red line. Rojas grinned. You always do. They worked in silence for a while, checking panels, inspecting control surfaces. Iris had learned early in her career that the relationship between pilot and crew chief was sacred. The crew chief kept the jet flying. The pilot trusted them with their life. It was simple, pure. Colonel, Rojas said after a while, not looking up from her work. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Why the A-10? You could have flown anything. Vipers, Eagles, hell, even heavies. Why this ugly bastard?" Iris smiled. It was a question she'd heard before. "Because it does one thing better than anything else in the world. It protects people." Rojas looked up, met her eyes. "That's a good answer." That night, Iris sat in the ready room, reviewing mission briefs and weather reports. The base was quiet, the kind of quiet that came after dark in deployed locations. No flights scheduled, no alerts, just the low hum of the air conditioner and the flicker of the overhead lights. Captain Briggs walked in, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He set one in front of her. "Figured you could use this." She glanced at the mug, then at him. "Thanks." He sat down across from her, hands wrapped around his own mug. For a while, neither of them spoke. "Can I ask you something, Colonel?" Briggs said finally. "Everyone's full of questions today." He smiled, nervous. "How do you do it? Stay calm under pressure like that?" Iris leaned back in her chair, considering. It was a fair question, a hard one. "You don't," she said. "You just learn to function through the fear. The pressure doesn't go away, you just get better at carrying it." Briggs nodded slowly. "Were you ever scared in that valley?" "Every second." He blinked. "You didn't sound scared." "That's the job. Sound calm, be calm, even when you're not." "How do you learn that?" Iris took a sip of coffee. It was terrible. She drank it anyway. "Repetition, failure, time. You make mistakes, you learn, you do better next time, and you trust your training, trust the jet, trust yourself." "What if you make a mistake that costs lives?" She looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't asking hypothetically. He was asking because he was scared of that exact thing. "Then you live with it," she said quietly. "And you do better next time. That's all you can do." Briggs stared into his mug. After a moment, he nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." "Any time, Captain." He stood, took his mug, and left. Iris watched him go, then turned back to her paperwork. But the words blurred together, meaningless. She was thinking about mistakes, about the ones she'd made, about the ones she'd carry forever. Iris's call sign, Scorpion, hadn't been a gift. It had been earned in the worst way possible. Afghanistan, 2019. A valley not unlike this one. A convoy not unlike the one she'd just saved. But that time she'd been younger, less experienced, and she'd hesitated. Just for a second. 1 second between the target and the trigger. 1 second where she double-checked the coordinates, questioned the intel, second-guessed herself. 1 second too long. The RPG hit before she could fire. 2 men died. She'd replayed that moment 1,000 times. In the cockpit, in the shower, in her sleep. Always the same. Always wondering if that 1 second had made the difference. The investigation cleared her. The intel had been solid, the timing unavoidable, but it didn't matter. She knew the truth. She'd hesitated, and men had died. After that, she'd never hesitated again. The call sign came later from another pilot in her squadron. "You've got a sting now," he'd said. "Cold-blooded, precise, like a scorpion." She'd hated it at first, hated what it represented, but over time she'd made peace with it. The call sign wasn't about her. It was about what she owed. To the men who died, to the men she'd saved since, to every soldier who would ever hear her voice on the radio and know they weren't alone. Scorpion. Cold-blooded, precise. Never hesitating again. The next morning, Major Cross called her to his office. She knocked once, entered when he barked permission. "Colonel Sid." She sat. Cross looked even more tired than usual, shadows under his eyes, hair uncombed. "I'll make this quick. Command wants you to do an interview. PAO is setting it up. They want to use the 2nd platoon story for recruiting material." Iris's jaw tightened. "No. It's not a request." "Then it should be." Cross sighed, rubbed his face. Look, I get it. You don't want the attention, but this isn't about you. It's about the mission, about showing people what we do here. They don't need me for that. Use the gun camera footage. Use the major's testimony. Hell, use Torrance. He's better at talking than I am. They want the pilot. Then find another one. Cross leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Iris, I'm not asking as your commanding officer. I'm asking as someone who respects what you did. Those men deserve to have their story told, and you're part of that story. She wanted to argue, wanted to walk out, but he was right. Damn him, he was right. Fine, one interview, no follow-ups. Deal. She stood, turned to leave. Iris. She stopped, looked back. You did good out there, better than good, don't forget that. She didn't answer, just nodded once and walked out. The interview was scheduled for the following afternoon. Iris spent the morning flying a training sortie, running through tactical scenarios with her wingman, a younger pilot named Captain Lena Ortiz. Ortiz was sharp, aggressive, the kind of pilot who pushed the jet to its limits. They landed just after noon, taxied to the flight line, shut down the engines. Ortiz climbed out first, helmet under her arm, grinning. Nice bounce back there, Colonel. Thought you were gonna scrape the tail. Iris climbed down from the cockpit, legs stiff from 3 hours in the seat. I had it under control. Sure you did. They walked toward the squadron building, side by side. Ortiz was one of the few pilots Iris genuinely liked. No ego, no bullshit, just good flying and a sense of humor that cut through the tension. So I heard you're doing the PAO Dog and Pony show, Ortiz said. Don't remind me. Want some advice? Not really. Too bad, here it is. Don't be yourself, be the version of yourself they want to see. Confident, inspiring, all that garbage. Iris glanced at her. That's terrible advice. Yeah, but it works. The PAO team was waiting in the briefing room. 2 cameras, 3 lights, a nervous lieutenant with a clipboard. Iris sat in the designated chair, adjusted her flight suit, and waited while they fussed with the lighting. Okay, Colonel, the lieutenant said. We're just going to ask you a few questions about the mission. Keep it conversational, natural. Right. The camera light blinked red. Colonel Valen, can you walk us through what happened in Sector 7? Iris took a breath, found the camera, and started talking. She hated every second of it. The questions were predictable. The answers felt rehearsed. They wanted sound bites, not truth. They wanted a hero, not a pilot who'd been scared and tired and lucky. But she played along, talked about the convoy, the danger-close engagement, the training that made it possible. She kept it short, professional, gave them what they needed and nothing more. When it was over, the lieutenant thanked her, packed up the equipment, and left. Iris sat alone in the briefing room, staring at the empty chair across from her. Ortiz appeared in the doorway. How'd it go? Like pulling teeth. Could be worse, at least you didn't cry. Iris snorted, I don't cry. Everyone cries, Colonel. Some of us just hide it better. They walked out together, back into the heat and the dust and the noise of the flight line. Ortiz peeled off toward the barracks, and Iris headed for the Warthog. Staff Sergeant Rojas was there, running a post-flight inspection. Everything okay, ma'am? Yeah, just needed to see the jet. Rojas nodded, didn't press. She understood. Iris climbed up onto the wing, sat down with her legs dangling over the side. The sun was low on the horizon, turning the sky orange and red. From here, she could see the whole base. The tents, the vehicles, the people moving like ants across the dirt. This was her world. Not the interviews, or the medals, or the thank yous. Just the jet, the mission, the people she kept alive. Everything else was noise. The video went live 3 days later. Iris didn't watch it, didn't need to. She already knew what it would say. But everyone else watched it. Within 24 hours, it had been shared across military forums, reposted on social media, picked up by news outlets. The comments section exploded. Most of it was positive, thank yous, praise, respect. Some of it wasn't. Why is a woman flying combat missions? Bet she had help from her wingman. Diversity higher. Iris ignored it. She'd learned long ago that you couldn't control what people said. You could only control what you did, and she'd done her job. That was enough. But the attention didn't stop. Requests for interviews came in from major networks. A publisher reached out about a book deal. Someone started a petition to name an Air Force base after her. Major Cross called her in again. "You're a celebrity now, Colonel. How does it feel?" "Like a mistake." He laughed. "Yeah, I figured. Look, I can run interference on most of this. But there's one thing I can't block. The Secretary of the Air Force wants to meet you. In person." Iris closed her eyes. "When?" "Next week. D.C. They're flying you back for a ceremony." "What kind of ceremony?" "The kind where they pin medals on you and take pictures." "Great. Could be worse. Could be a parade." She opened her eyes, glared at him. He held up his hands. "Kidding, mostly." The flight back to the States was long and uncomfortable. Iris slept in fits, woke with a stiff neck and a bad taste in her mouth. By the time they landed at Andrews, she was ready to turn around and fly back to the desert. A staff car was waiting. She threw her bag in the trunk and climbed into the back seat. The driver, a young airman, didn't say much, just navigated through D.C. traffic while Iris stared out the window. The city felt alien, clean, ordered, no dust, no sandbags, no constant hum of danger, just people going about their lives, unaware of what was happening halfway around the world. The Pentagon loomed ahead, massive and gray. The car pulled up to the entrance and Iris stepped out into the humid Virginia air. An aide met her at the door, led her through security, up elevators, down hallways that all looked the same. Finally, they stopped outside a conference room. "The secretary will be with you shortly, Colonel." Iris nodded. The aide left. She stood alone in the hallway, adjusting her uniform, trying to remember why she'd agreed to this. The door opened. A man in a suit stepped out, extended his hand. "Colonel Valen, Secretary Mitchell, thank you for coming." She shook his hand. His grip was firm, professional. "Thank you for the invitation, sir." "Please come in." The conference room was small, wood-paneled, with a table that could seat 12. Only 3 chairs were occupied. Secretary Mitchell, a 2-star general she didn't recognize, and a woman in a Navy uniform, captain's insignia on her collar. "Colonel, this is General Reeves and Captain Soto. They're here to discuss your future with the Air Force." Iris's stomach tightened. "My future, sir." "Sit, please." She sat, they sat. Secretary Mitchell folded his hands on the table. "Colonel, you've had an impressive career. 300 combat missions, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, Silver Star, and now this, saving 28 lives in a danger-close engagement. You're exactly the kind of officer we want leading the next generation." Iris said nothing, waited. "We'd like to offer you a position at the Air Force Academy. Instructor pilot. You'd be training the cadets who'll fly the missions of tomorrow." She blinked. "Sir, with respect, I'm a line pilot. I belong in the cockpit." "You're 41, Colonel. How many more years do you think you have flying combat?" The question hung in the air like a blade. "As many as they'll give me." General Reeves leaned forward. "The A-10 is being phased out. You know that. 5 more years, maybe less, and it'll be retired. What then?" Iris met his eyes. "Then I'll fly whatever they put me in." "Or," Secretary Mitchell said gently, "you could shape the future. Train the pilots who will carry on your legacy." "My legacy isn't a teaching position, sir. It's in the cockpit." The room went quiet. Captain Soto, who hadn't spoken yet, finally did. Colonel, I flew Hornets off carriers for 15 years. I understand what you're feeling. But there comes a time when the best thing you can do is pass the torch. Iris looked at her, saw the sincerity, the understanding. I'm not ready to pass anything, Captain. Secretary Mitchell sighed. We're not ordering you, Colonel, just asking you to consider it. Take some time, think it over. I don't need time, sir. My answer is no. He nodded slowly. All right, but the offer stands. If you change your mind, the door's open. The meeting ended. Iris stood, shook hands, and walked out. Her hands were trembling again. She just turned down a promotion, a cushy job, a future. And she didn't regret it for a second. The ceremony was the next day. A small auditorium in the Pentagon, 50 people in attendance. Iris stood on stage while Secretary Mitchell read a citation she barely heard, words like valor and heroism and dedication. Then he pinned the Distinguished Flying Cross to her chest, shook her hand, and posed for photos. Afterward, there was a reception. Iris stood in the corner holding a glass of water, avoiding conversation. A few people approached, other pilots, Pentagon staffers, a journalist who wanted a quote. She gave polite answers, deflected, waited for it to be over. Then Sergeant Torrens appeared. He was in his dress uniform, medals gleaming, the scar on his face somehow more prominent in the indoor light. Colonel. She turned surprised. Torrens, what are you doing here? They flew me in for the ceremony. Wanted one of the guys you saved to be here. He paused. I'm glad I came. You didn't have to. I know I wanted to. They stood in silence for a moment, the noise of the reception fading into the background. My wife wanted me to give you something, Torrens said. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small envelope. She wrote you a letter. I told her you probably wouldn't read it, but she insisted. Iris took the envelope, felt the weight of it. I'll read it, she said quietly. Torrens smiled. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. He walked away. Iris slipped the envelope into her pocket and left the reception without saying goodbye to anyone. Back in her hotel room, she opened the envelope. The letter was handwritten, 2 pages, neat cursive. Dear Colonel Valen, my name is Emily Torrens. You don't know me, but you saved my husband's life. Mike told me what happened in that valley, how you flew through enemy fire to protect him and his platoon, how you didn't hesitate. I'm writing because I don't think you understand what you did. You didn't just save Mike. You saved me. You saved our 3 kids. You saved the baby I'm carrying. You saved our future. Mike is a good man, a good father, and because of you, he gets to come home. Our kids get to grow up with their dad. I get to grow old with my husband. I know you were just doing your job, but your job saved my family, and I will never forget that. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Emily Torrens. Iris read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and set it on the nightstand. She lay down on the bed, stared at the ceiling, and let herself cry. The flight back to theater was quieter than the flight out. Iris slept most of the way, dreamless and deep. When the plane touched down, she felt the tension drain from her shoulders. This was where she belonged, not in conference rooms or ceremonies. Here, in the dirt and the heat and the danger. Staff Sergeant Rojas was waiting at the flight line when Iris arrived. Welcome back, ma'am. How was D.C.? Overrated. Rojas grinned. Figured. The jet's ready when you are. Got a mission brief at 1400. Iris dropped her bag in her hooch, changed into her flight suit, and headed to the briefing room. Major Cross was already there, along with Captain Ortiz and 2 other pilots. Colonel, good to have you back. Good to be back, sir. Cross pulled up the map. We've got reports of enemy movement in Sector 9. Convoys heading through in 6 hours. We're providing top cover. 2 Warthogs, staggered CAP, full loadout. Iris studied the map. Sector 9 was rough terrain, narrow valleys, high ridgelines, plenty of places to hide. It would be a challenging flight, exactly what she needed. "Who's my wingman?" "Ortiz." Iris glanced at her. Ortiz smirked. "Try to keep up, Colonel." "In your dreams, Captain." The briefing continued. Weather comms frequencies, row, standard stuff. Iris took notes, memorized the details, and ran through the mission in her head. After the briefing, she and Ortiz walked to the flight line together. "You okay?" Ortiz asked. "Yeah, why?" "I don't know, you seem different. Lighter, maybe." Iris thought about the letter, about Emily Torrens, about the future she'd saved without even knowing it. "Maybe I am." The mission went smooth. No contact, no drama, just 6 hours of flying lazy circles above a convoy that never got hit. Boring in the best possible way. When they landed, Iris felt the familiar satisfaction of a job done right. Not every mission had to be a firefight. Sometimes, the best missions were the ones where nothing happened. Ortiz climbed out of her cockpit, stretched, and walked over. Well, that was a waste of gas. Better than the alternative. "True, wanna grab chow?" "Sure." They walked to the chow hall, grabbed trays of food that tasted like cardboard, and sat at a corner table. Around them, the base hummed with the rhythm of deployment. Troops coming and going, conversations in a dozen languages, the clatter of trays and boots. "Can I ask you something?" Ortiz said. "Everyone's asking me things lately. Why do you still fly? You've done your time, you could retire tomorrow with full benefits. Why stay?" Iris chewed, swallowed, thought about the question. "Because I'm good at it, and because people need me to be good at it." "That's it. That's it." Ortiz nodded slowly. "Fair enough." They finished eating in silence. Afterward, Iris walked back to her hooch, showered, and lay down. The letter was still on the nightstand. She picked it up, read it one more time, then tucked it into her locker. She didn't need to read it again. She'd carry it with her now, every mission, every flight. A reminder of what she was fighting for. Word of the ceremony spread quickly. By the next morning, everyone on base knew that Colonel Valen had been to the Pentagon, met the secretary, received another medal. The younger pilots looked at her differently now, not with awe exactly, but with a kind of respect that went deeper than rank. Iris didn't encourage it, didn't discourage it either. She just kept flying. 3 days later, another mission came through. Troops in contact, same valley as before. This time, the convoy was pinned down by mortar fire. Iris and Ortiz launched within minutes, pushed the jets to max throttle, arrived overhead in 12 minutes. The mortars were hidden in a tree line, hard to spot from altitude. Iris descended to 2,000 feet, low enough to draw fire, high enough to survive it. The rounds came up in green tracers, stitching through the air around her. She ignored them, focused on the target. Anvil Scorpion 1-1. Visual on mortar positions, cleared hot. Scorpion, you are cleared hot. Friendlies are 200 meters north of the tree line. Copy, commencing gun run. She rolled in, lined up the pipper, fired. The gun roared. The tree line exploded. She pulled up, banked hard, came around for a second pass. Ortiz followed, dropping a pair of Mavericks that turned the mortars into smoking craters. Anvil Scorpion, targets destroyed, say status. Scorpion, we're good, moving now, thanks for the save. Iris didn't reply, just pulled into orbit, watched the convoy disappear into the dust. Another mission, another group of men who'd go home. Another day in the life. That night, Major Cross found her in the ready room. "Colonel, got something for you." He handed her a folder. Inside was a handwritten letter addressed to her, postmarked from Kansas. "Who's it from?" "Read it and find out." She opened the letter. It was from a woman named Sarah Jennings. Her son, Private First Class Marcus Jennings, had been in the convoy. He'd written home about the pilot who'd saved them, about the A-10 that sounded like thunder, about how he'd never felt safer than when he heard that gun. The letter ended with a simple line. "Thank you for bringing my son home." Iris folded the letter, set it on the desk. "They keep writing," she said quietly. "They do." "Why?" Cross sat down across from her. "Because you gave them something they can't repay, and writing is the only way they know how to say thank you." "I don't need thanks." "I know, but they need to give it." Iris looked at the letter again, thought about Marcus Jennings, about his mother, about all the mothers who'd never get letters like this because their sons didn't come home. "It's not fair," she said. "No," Cross agreed, "it's not." They sat in silence for a while. Then Cross stood, clapped her on the shoulder, and left. Iris stayed, staring at the letter, feeling the weight of it. The weight of all of them. The weeks blurred together. More missions, more convoys, more lives saved. Iris flew every sortie they'd give her, pushed herself harder than she probably should have. Ortiz noticed. "Colonel, you're going to burn out." "I'm fine." "You're flying 6 sorties a week. That's not sustainable." "It is if I need it to be." Ortiz shook her head but didn't argue. She knew better. The truth was, Iris couldn't stop. Every mission felt like a chance to balance the scales, to make up for that 1 second in Afghanistan, to prove that she wouldn't hesitate again. And she hadn't, not once. But the cost was adding up. She was tired, bone-deep tired, the kind of tired that sleep didn't fix. One night she sat in the cockpit of her Warthog, alone, the engines cold. The sun had set hours ago and the base was quiet. She ran her hand along the control stick, feeling the worn grip, the smooth metal. "How much longer?" she whispered. The jet didn't answer, just sat there patient and waiting. She climbed down, walked back to her hooch and collapsed onto the cot. Sleep came fast, heavy, filled with dreams of valleys and smoke and voices on the radio. When she woke it was 400, time to fly again. The mission brief was routine. Close air support for a patrol moving through contested territory. 2 Warthogs, standard loadout, 4 hours on station. Iris and Ortiz pre-flighted their jets, strapped in, started engines. The flight out was smooth. Clear skies, light winds, no chatter on the radio. They reached the patrol area and began their CAP, circling lazily at 10,000 feet. Then the radio crackled. "Scorpion, this is Sabre 2-3. We've got movement. Multiple dismounts, eastern ridgeline." Iris keyed the mic. "Sabre, Scorpion 1-1. Copy movement. Can you mark?" "Negative, Scorpion. No visual yet. Stand by." She descended to 5,000 feet, scanning the ridgeline through her HUD. Nothing. Just rocks and scrub brush. Then the world lit up. Muzzle flashes, dozens of them. The patrol was taking fire from 3 sides. "Sabre, Scorpion, I've got visual. Multiple hostiles, danger close to your position. Say smoke." "Scorpion, smoke is red, northeast corner, cleared hot." Iris didn't hesitate. She rolled in, lined up the gun, fired. The ridgeline exploded. She pulled up, came around for another pass. Ortiz followed, dropping mavericks that shook the ground. The patrol broke contact, retreated to cover. Iris stayed overhead, eyes sweeping for more threats. "Sabre, Scorpion, you're clear. Moving to cover your extract." "Copy, Scorpion, thanks." She climbed back to altitude, breathing hard. Another mission, another save. But this time, something felt different. She realized her hands were shaking again. After the debrief, Iris walked to the flight line, found her jet, climbed up onto the wing. She sat there for a long time, watching the sun set, feeling the metal cool beneath her. Staff Sergeant Rojas appeared, carrying a toolbox. "Evening, ma'am." "Evening, Rojas." "You okay?" Iris didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure how to. "I'm tired," she said finally. Rojas climbed up onto the wing, sat down beside her. They didn't speak, just sat watching the light fade. "You know what I think," Rojas said after a while. "What?" "I think you've given everything you've got, and that's enough." Iris looked at her. Rojas's face was calm, open, no judgment, just truth. "What if it's not?" Iris said quietly. "Then you've given more than most, and that still counts." They sat in silence until the stars came out. Then Rojas stood, picked up her toolbox, and walked away. Iris stayed on the wing, staring at the sky, thinking about letters and families and futures she'd saved. Thinking about the 1 second she'd never get back. And wondering if, maybe, it was time to let it go. The next morning, Iris requested a meeting with Major Cross. He looked surprised when she walked in. "Colonel, what's up?" She sat down, took a breath. "I've been thinking about that offer, the academy position." Cross leaned back in his chair, studied her. "And I'm not ready to leave the cockpit, but I'm not sure how much longer I can keep doing this." "That's honest." "I need to know something, sir. Do you think I'm still effective as a pilot?" Cross didn't hesitate. "You're the best pilot I've ever seen, hands down, but effective doesn't just mean skill, it also means sustainability, and I think you're running on fumes." Iris nodded slowly. She'd known the answer before she asked. "So what do I do?" "You take some leave, you rest, and then you decide if you want to keep flying or do something else, but you don't make that decision while you're exhausted." "I can't just leave, there are missions." "There are always missions, Iris, and there are other pilots, good ones, they'll manage." She wanted to argue, but the truth was she was tired, so tired. "Okay," she said finally, "I'll take the leave." Cross smiled. "Good, go home, see your family, remember what you're fighting for." She stood, saluted, and walked out. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe.